I call the member for Pascoe Vale.
Thank you, Acting Speaker, for the call. I too rise to speak on the Gambling Legislation Amendment, Pre-Commitment and Carded Play Bill of 2024. In doing so, I'd like to acknowledge the work of the Minister for Casino, Gambling and Liquor Regulation, his team, departmental officials and all the stakeholders that have been involved in bringing this bill to Parliament. And in doing so, I'd like to acknowledge, of course, how many community clubs, RSLs, hospitality venues who all play an important economic, employment, community and social role across all of our neighbourhoods. For many, our community pubs and clubs are a place to catch up with friends, family, celebrate special occasions or just enjoy a night out. And many community clubs also make a significant contribution to local communities, employ dozens of local residents and support many grassroots sport, charities and social programs that benefit thousands of Victorians, including across my community. But that's why it's also important, Deputy Speaker, that these reforms strike a balance in minimising gambling harm while ensuring that community venues remain safe and enjoyable parts of Victorian life. Because, Deputy Speaker, while we recognise that gambling is a legitimate recreational activity which many Victorians partake in safely, enjoyably and sustainably, including through the Melbourne Cup, the Spring Racing Carnival and other forums, and as the member for Melton pointed out earlier in his local community too, gambling can also, though, very much have a darker side for many people and families that are vulnerable to exploitation. That is why, whilst gambling in its various legal forms and platforms are activities engaged in by many, we must always continue to remain vigilant and work to ensure we continue to identify, mitigate against and address the risks associated with gambling harm across our local communities. Because it's this gambling harm or gambling addiction that can have a terrible and devastating impact on people's lives and our local communities. Each year, Deputy Speaker, more than 500,000 Victorians experience gambling harm, whether it be through their own or someone else's gambling. A 2017 study previously commissioned by the Victorian Responsible Gambling Foundation found that up to 30% of people presenting to primary care alcohol and other drugs and mental health services experience problem gambling. Research by Gambling Alliance Reform and Roy Morgan that surveyed 16,000 Australians released in July 2024 showed that problem or moderate gamblers, who make up just 12.7% of those who gamble, make up almost half of gambling revenue. That's 48.5%. 56% of problem gamblers suffer from mental health concerns, and that's 21% more likely than the Australian average. 41% suffer from anxiety, that's 20% more likely than the average Australian. And 37% of problem gamblers agree with the statement that I often feel my debt levels are out of control, which is 65% more likely than the average Australian. And Speaker, speaking from personal experience, I can very much attest to the first-hand impacts that gambling harm can have on the well-being of households, families and young people, having very much grown up in a household that experienced the significant brunt of gambling harm and what it means for young people and children and their upbringing, which is a story I'll share at a later date. And in this respect, I very much welcome the bill that's currently before the Chamber, which is all about designed a set of reforms that are responding to gambling harm to support vulnerable households and people. On the 16th of July 2023, the former Premier announced Australia's most significant package of gambling reforms, with the focus of the reforms making provision for the how and the when people gamble, making sure patrons have adequate protections when they sit down at an electronic gaming machine, an EGM, at their local club or hotel. That's why we've continued to lead the nation through the previous reforms we've committed to and progressed that have included the establishment of the Victorian Gambling and Casino Control Commission, the VGCCC, Australia's strongest gambling regulator with enhanced oversight and enforcement powers, mandatory carded play for pokies at Crown, ensuring players track and manage their gambling. We've also committed to reducing load limits on EGMs from $1,000 down to $100, which this bill before us will make provision for, to strengthen existing money laundering standards and ensure responsible gambling practices. Venue operators must then verify and identify before paying out credits of $2,000 or more. And of course, we've introduced the mandatory closure periods where since the 30th of August, 2024, all hotels and clubs must close gaming areas between 4 a.m. and 10 a.m. to reduce extended gambling sessions. But Speaker, of course, these previous reforms, much of which will continue to build on through the bill before the House. This bill establishes those necessary legislative and regulatory frameworks to support the phased implementation of mandatory carded play and pre-commitment on EGMs in Victoria. And specifically, the bill will ensure that all new gaming machines installed in a gaming venue after the 1st of December 2025 have a spin rate of at least 3 seconds. That's a 40% increase than the current rate of 2.14 seconds. This will help slow the rate at which people are gambling on EGMs and help provide that additional breathing space for people to moderate and temper their behaviour. It will also require player cards to meet requirements set out in regulations and prohibit venue operators from issuing a player card without first verifying the player's identity. It will enable the Minister to direct the loyalty scheme provider or venue operator to provide loyalty scheme information to the Minister or to the VGCCC. It will enable the Minister to direct the monitor to ensure a person may not play on a gaming machine without a player account. It will prohibit a venue operator from allowing someone to play a gaming machine without using a player card where a direction to the monitor is in place. And it will also expand the existing regulation, making powers so requirements may be prescribed for pre-commitment and carded play. The bill also amends the Casino Control Act of 91 to ensure that all gaming machines installed at the casino after 1 December 25 have a spin rate of at least 3 seconds. And of course, there's quite a number of other reforms, regulations and provisions in this bill that help give effect to these very important new measures. Full implementation is expected by August 2027 and will require a player to abide by their loss limit by that stage. Once the loss limit is reached, players will be prevented from using a gaming machine until their limit period resets. And of course, the bill is based on very extensive community consultation across various parts of the sectors that are impacted. And of course, it's also supported by a number of stakeholders, including the Alliance of Gambling Reform, with the CEO of the Alliance, Martin Thomas, emailing all of us yesterday and saying that evidence shows that mandatory carded play with pre-commitment is the gold standard for reducing gambling harm for poker machines. As a result of the Royal Commission into Crown Casino, this was implemented from December 2024 at Crown, and this legislation supports the remaining venues in Victoria with EGMs to have the same system for patrons. Poker machine losses in Victoria have reached a record $3 billion in 23-24. The Alliance strongly supports and applauds Victoria's decision to support mandatory carded play, which is a sensible measure. And of course, with Australians spending more on gambling per capita than comparable countries, we must continue taking that action, Acting Speaker, to reduce the impacts of gambling harm. Across my community, we have 12 local venues with EGMs, pokies, a total of 639 local EGMs, and in 23-24, over $61.4 million were lost through each of these machines collectively. That equates to $5 million per month, or around $356 per person, Acting Speaker. These include the Abruzzo Club with 55 machines, 1.8 million, Browns Corner Hotel, 35 machines, 5.3 million, Courthouse Hotel in Brunswick, $119,000, the Drums Hotel in Coburg with 75 machines, $9.4 million, Duke of Edinburgh, 50 machines, $7 million, the Falconer RSL, 33 machines, $1.1 million, First and Last Hotel, 64 machines, $10.7 million, Glenroy RSL, 40 machines, $6 million, Lyndhurst Club Hotel, $2.3 million, Moreland Hotel, 70 machines, $7.2 million, Northcote Park Football Club, 85 machines, $3.4 million. The Pascoe RSL, 47 machines, equated to $2.3 million. Pascoe Tavern Hotel, 42 machines, $5.5 million. The Reggio Calabria Club, $721,000. And the Brunswick Club with 43 machines, $1.1 million. Speaker, as I cited earlier in this debate, all of these clubs play an important role in employing local people, providing a great meal or a social night out for families, and make a great contribution to donating to many local sporting and community clubs. However, we need to ensure through the measures contained in this bill that we continue to do all we can to mitigate against and support people at risk of gambling harm. And in that respect, I just want to acknowledge the Minister for Gaming. He came out to visit my electorate and a couple of these pubs and clubs back in February. We visited the Drums Hotel and met with local long-time publican Stuart Steele. The pub was established way back in 1875, just opposite Pentridge Prison, and still continues to provide a great environment for local families to have a good meal out. There's also across Marybeck the Gambling in Moreland strategy, which breaks down how local people do spend their gaming revenue or income. 53% of local households report gambling touch lotto or scratchies, 26% gamble on horse racing, 23% gamble via poker machines, 8% on sports betting, which I'm sure has increased since this report was first introduced in 2015-2020. Of those who gamble on poker machines, individuals reported accessing poker machines across multiple locations, including 47% hotels, 42% RSLs, 25% at the casino and 22% at sporting clubs. Sports gambling was most likely to be accessed online, 53%, followed by a local hotel. It's in that respect, Acting Speaker, I commend this bill to the chamber. It's all about helping build a better